This episode is brought to you by JLL. Get an insider view into the world of commercial real estate with JLL's podcast, Trends and Insights, the Future of Commercial Real Estate. Whether you're curious about making cities more sustainable, the evolution of office space, or AI opportunities, this podcast will help keep you a step ahead. Tune in for candid conversations with business leaders about the biggest trends impacting how we live, work, and play. Subscribe to Trends and Insights now at jll.com/podcast.
Welcome back, folks. It's Friday, March 8th, 2024. Now, I'm recording this as I often do from my family's kitchen table. It's where immeasurable amounts of news and a slightly more moderate amount of barbecue are consumed. Today, we have our state's direct impact on the big State of the Union show last night, a measure in the Capitol that could end up affecting health insurance prices, and a former sheriff's parole hearing. I'm Mike Morgan, and we're down in Alabama. If you love performances where half the audience is constantly interrupting with wild applause while the other half just sits there looking like the waitress just told them they were all out of hush puppies, then you were in your element Thursday night. President Joe Biden gave his annual State of the Union address, and it was wonderful or awful depending on who you ask. During the speech, he acknowledged a guest in the First Lady's box seats. Latoria Beasley of Birmingham, the president said, has had one child through in vitro fertilization and was hoping to have another, but that the Alabama Supreme Court, quote, shut down IVF clinics across the state. He also called on Congress to pass legislation protecting IVF. Now, the state high court, of course, had issued a ruling that led some IVF clinics in Alabama to suspend services to avoid legal jeopardy. A day before the president's speech, Alabama Governor Kay Ivey signed into law a measure intended to protect IVF clinics from civil and criminal action over their handling of human embryos. Now, it's likely a temporary fix, with more possibly coming next year. Alabama's U.S. Senator Katie Britt delivered the traditional opposition response to Biden's speech. She leaned heavily into the southern border issue, recalling a meeting with a trafficking victim and calling out Biden over policies she said allowed for the death of University of Georgia student Laken Riley. The suspect in that case is in the country illegally and had previously been arrested in connection with other crimes and released. Criticism of her speech largely focused on the stylistic, that her delivery was overripe, and that it was a bad idea to make her video backdrop the Britt family kitchen. Britt had explained at the top of her response that the kitchen table was a place where her family has had their tough conversations. The Insurance Committee from the Alabama House of Representatives approved a bill this week that's likely to get a lot of attention in the coming days. At issue is the possibility that it'll drive up prescription prices. Mary Sell of the Alabama Daily News reports that the measure requires pharmacy benefit managers for insurers to reimburse in-network pharmacies the full cost of a medication. It also adds a dispensing fee of $10.64. The bill is sponsored by State Representative Philip Rigsby, a Huntsville Republican and former pharmacist. The goal here is to keep pharmacies from losing money on these transactions. Rigsby said he sold his pharmacy because of losses he was taking on some drugs. Now, that $10.64, according to Rigsby, would help cover the pharmacy's costs of doing business, staff, utilities, etc. It's also the bone that'll be picked. Opponents from groups such as the Alliance of Alabama Healthcare Consumers are calling it a tax on prescriptions. And according to the Alabama Daily News story, Rigsby told others on the committee that those costs could show up in higher insurance premiums or copays. AL.com recently did a series called Denied on how fewer and fewer Alabama prison inmates are being paroled. We shared some of it here. And I don't mean it was a little decrease in the parole rate. In 5 years, the parole board went from a parole rate of more than 50% to an 8% rate in 2023. That year, the board even turned down all 10 people who were over 80 years old and up for parole. So it's not particularly shocking that the board held firm despite dozens who showed up yesterday to support former Limestone County Sheriff of 38 years, Mike Blakely. AL.com's Savannah Trians-Fernandez reports that Blakely has been denied parole just over a year into his 3-year sentence. He was imprisoned after being convicted of felony theft and abuse of power. Former Athens DA John Plunt was among those who showed up to speak on Blakely's account. He said they weren't arguing about the former sheriff's guilt, but spoke on his remorse and his longtime service. Quote, "There will never be a TV program about cold cases from Limestone County because he solved every single murder case in his 40 years." End quote. Thank y'all so much for listening to us this week. Have a great weekend. We're going to be back here on Monday. Until then, as always, come by and see us anytime you want to. We're open 24 hours a day and 7 days a week on the World Wide Web at AL.com.